Do you ever look at an image or piece of media and wonder why it's disturbing? Is it the ambiance? Is it its aesthetic, the style in which it's made? There are plenty of factors that can go into something being terrifying, but those same factors, if not executed correctly, can also make it look frankly goofy and silly and just not scary at all. The Walten Files, a little YouTube series that has kind of swept the internet these past few months, has managed to achieve everything that it needs to achieve in order to be properly terrifying, while at the same time performing a deeper level of horror that some other things simply can't achieve. Yes, all of the animation and the style is disturbing to say the least, but I personally believe that this particular video series best achieves its horror through its use of motifs and leitmotifs. The first use of motif that I would like to look at is the constant use of zooming in on an individual's face. Now, other than obviously the disfigured proportions at which most of the time that they're presented, the manner in which they're presented is what hammers down uncertainty and uncertainty, which adds to the horror element. What I mean by that is that whenever there's a new character introduced and their identity is supposed to be ambiguous, their features are always distorted, contorted, or even gored or decayed. Whereas if there's an introduction of a character that's meant to be more explicit and they're first introduced, then it's much more clear. So examples of the ambiguousness of of introducing a character, you might have someone like Charles being introduced later on in the Bunny Farm video, or Susan Woodings in the beginner's tapes with Bon. Now, there's some purposes, obviously, for making this and presenting faces like this. First of all, obviously, it's very uncomfortable to see human faces contorted and stretched and gored and decaying up in front and literally staring at you, the audience. In seeing these decaying faces or these misshapen faces, what we get to see is obviously this pain and suffering that these spirits and these people are still hanging on to, right? And their last moments of life. And also on top of that, it's a very sensitive area of your body. Your face is very sensitive. Everything hurts up there to see. So to see facial features gored like that really adds to that horror element. You don't really see a whole lot of other gore other than, well, it's happening in and around the face, except for one spot where you see Rosie get chopped up and then stuffed into the Shaw suit. Secondly, what makes it terrifying, in my opinion, is this element of memory that's added onto it. And the reason why I bring this up is that there's one line that stood out to me. It was with Charles. And with Charles, right, when it shows his disfigured face for the last time in the video, basically you get a little caption at the bottom and it says, "I can't remember my face." So what's telling me is that this disfigured element in which they present themselves to Sophie is it's this assimilation of a new identity, essentially. And this identity is one that is full of pain, full of confusion, full of anxiety, that they just simply don't know how to get around. But that also has another level of purpose to it as well. If you're dead, right, you can contort and present yourself supposedly probably any way that you'd like to be presented or seen as. But they instead choose to hang on to these misshapen identities of theirs for presumably the purpose of being able to retell the story which has befallen them tragically, and to show that, hey, we're gone, try and remember us, and try to remember that we went violently, that we went poorly, that we were cut down abruptly, right? And the only way that we can properly communicate that to you, Sophie, is through showing our disfigurement and becoming embodiments of the pain, right? So I think that's particularly terrifying. Another thing is also a memory element from Sophie's perspective. There could be a reason why a lot of these faces are disfigured other than being gored. The entire time she's dealing with a memory problem, right? She can't remember exactly who these people are. So it's only natural that if you're trying to recall something, that memory is going to be a little bit fuzzy, especially if they've been, you know, suppressed by medications. Essentially, it would make sense for a lot of these faces to be cloudy or hazy, or in some of the cases not necessarily the case. Like, for instance, initially with Rosie, you actually have clear pictures of them, and same thing with Jack as well. You have clear images of what these people looked like, but over time they became more fuzzy and hazy as more specific elements of their memory came into light, particularly surrounding their vanishing or surrounding their excruciating deaths. Another motif that I would like to look at is this motif of blood that you see. Now, obviously, you're going to look at blood and go, oh, yeah, you know, they're murdered. They get chopped up and shoved into a robot suit in a really gruesome manner. Yeah, obviously, there's going to be blood. But the thing about blood and whenever it's shown in the video itself, it is always shown fading into the scene. It never starts out in the scene. It always enters the scene after someone else has been presented. And I like that as a motif because what you get is this element of, oh, these new ideas, these memories are flooding back, especially with the use of it as in the well in the Bunny Farm video, is that you have the well and then Sophie gives like the photo of the two red kids, and then you get the background behind the well. It turns red. It shifts into red, like you see a lot of the other times at the presentation of an animatronic, and then they become bloodied. You're slowly realizing that these memories are flooding back and they're fading back into a concrete memory, and there's that association finally that hits you, that you're associating a childhood character with a tragic loss of a loved one. So I like that use of a motif, and I think that adds to an element of horror because it's a very subtle motif. We get a few more concrete uses of motif that are more explicit, notably the repetition of phrases. That happens a whole lot in this series, is the repetition of phrases, but they use that element for the sake of horror as well as using it to firmly establish a timeline or something that's happened or an emotion. For instance, the repetition of the beauty motif that gets brought up a lot. Whenever someone dies and begins to possess a robot, they are said to have been made beautiful by the Bond robot, whoever specifically possesses that one. I'd like to kind of delve into what they mean by being made beautiful. I think it's a little bit more than just, oh, it's a robot, it's a higher form of existence. I kind of like to think of it as this spiritual understanding of how things are. Because whenever you're made to be beautiful in this timeline, you are condemned with death and the knowledge that surrounds death. So I like to think of this beauty motif more or less being symbolic of the loss of innocence, especially because of Ed and Molly being children when they died, and they're not necessarily surrounded with that kind of stuff in their lives. And then suddenly, bada boom, they're dead. Being made beautiful, I think, is a little bit a level deeper than just possessing a metallic body, more so than it is your psyche post-mortem gains higher knowledge of the world and about you. Obviously, when they're being more specific with things, there's the rabbit is starving motif, which gets brought up, and images of rabbits running free and all about, kind of symbolizing this element that these people are trapped here, they can't move on because of the circumstances in which they died. Obviously, there's the missing motif. It's not really even a motif. It's just kind of plays into the fact of repetition of phrases to establish timeline. You get with Charles and Jack more specifically, with missing posters as well. The concept of being missing, I think, plays into this as well, because they're not just missing. The people who go missing aren't just missing from the society itself. They're also kind of missing from Sophie's psyche and her schemata. They were there, but now they've vanished. So she's looking for them. And where do you go when you're looking for someone normally? You look at a missing poster. So I think that's a powerful use of a very simple piece of medium which they have decided to express memory in this work. And then lastly, I need to get to the leitmotif, obviously. I think it's the most elegant aspect of it all because of the kind of music that they use. The kind of music that is used in the Walten Files is oldies music. You hear a lot of old carnival music, a lot of old church music, and then my favorite nod off of it all is the use of two songs in particular, both of them being samples from the Everywhere of at the End of Time soundtrack by the Caretaker, which is in itself a study of leitmotif and memory loss, being samples from Al Boli's uh, Heartaches, which is more famously known as being the Just a Burning Memory, the opening track of the entire six and a half hour long piece, and then Goodnight My Beautiful by Russ Morgan, or more infamously incorporated into the Caretaker's album as Back There Benjamin, which is one of the more haunting tracks in the entire work. I think is a very elegant nod because the entire time you're looking at the entire piece through the lenses of someone who can't remember anything. So to include those pieces specifically establishes the fact that you're dealing with memory loss, and that's a major theme and component of the entire work. But the overall use of oldies music, it's music that's foreign. You're digging back into time, which is exactly what Rosie is doing. So it would be appropriate to include older music with older, hazier memories, especially those of which you might have difficulty recalling. The use of leitmotif is very, very smart for that reason. And I absolutely adore the fact that that kind of music is used in a work like this. I believe that'll be everything for this video. Thank you for watching, letting me give my 2 cents on this absolutely wonderful web series. Let's do a little bit of analysis on it. And more videos coming soon. Thanks for watching. Once again, go support the original creator. I will put the link in the description to their channel. So please go check them out, obviously. Thank you very much, and thanks for watching.